Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan, and I'm glad to have all of you with me today. And today we're going to be talking about a few of my favorite things, such as positivity, humor, happiness, and who better to speak on these topics than an Irishman? From IrishmanSpeaks.com, please welcome Conor Canine. Hey, Conor.
Hey Dan, delighted to be on the show and happy Labor Day to you.
Well, thank you, and happy Labor Day to you as well. Uh, And Connor, you are a former vice president of marketing, and you've learned a few tips and tricks along the way, and you're going to be sharing some of those with us today about how people can add some positivity to their everyday life and a little bit of humor as well. But before that, I do have a question for you. I understand that you are a Metallica fan.
Yeah, rock and roll. Yeah, I am indeed. Yes. Yeah. 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 As I say, I like to play Metallica loud. My wife does not like me to play Metallica loud. And actually tomorrow in Chicago I'm going to see Megadeth. They're playing down in Tinley Park, so we'll be rocking our
Oh,
head up there as well.
Oh, that'll be fun. Yeah, I was going to ask you if Metallica was kind of an exception for you as far as your musical tastes, or do you just like heavier music in general?
Well, actually, my favorite artist of all is Bruce Springsteen. I just think that guy is just. It's really about what your show is about as well. Springsteen is all about making people feel good and joy and just bringing them to a crescendo of delight. And you leave the concert just, as I say, what I try to do in my presentations is leave the audience with a smile in the face and a spring in the step. And that's absolutely what Springsteen does. Although after 3 hours or 3.5 hours, the spring in the step is a bit leaden because it's taken so much out of you. But the man is a genius. But I do like, I like, to be honest, all genres of music. Next Saturday, I'm going to, what is it, the Outlaw Tour, is it? Which Bob Dylan, Willie Nelson, and John Mellencamp. It's probably their last hurrah. So,
Oh, wow.
not huge fans of any of them, but combined for a really good price. I think we got the tickets for $25 for Tinley Park. So I said to my wife, "Let's go." And she's not a big fan of either of them as well, or any of them. But they're legends. So let's go and see them.
Is she going with you to see Megadeth?
No, she is not. She'd be listening to Barry Manilow or something.
Oh, okay. Oh, fair enough. To each their own.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Connor, would you like to tell us a little about yourself and your background?
Yeah, it's Conor Canine. The brand is Irishman Speaks, Dan. And I came over here to the States. I've actually been working on my Chicago accent now for about 25 years. Nailed it, as you can see. But what brought me over initially was I was a VP of marketing with a large organization called Unilever on the food service side. Big brands would be things like Hellman's Mayonnaise, Thomas's English Muffins, Ben and Jerry's, etc. And after I left them, I just decided to go out on my own, do some consulting initially. As I was speaking at events on food service and marketing in general, I realized I was getting good reaction being asked back, then realized you could actually get paid for this kind of a thing. So I morphed into Irishman Speaks, and the mission now is to improve people, performance, and productivity with a smile. And I do think most organizations will say they want to improve their people, their performance, and their productivity. And if we can do it with a smile, it's going to be a win-win situation for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key for any business is to keep your employees happy, because if your employees are happy, then they're gonna, put that extra effort into their job. Do you find that to be true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing about employee retention and employee engagement, salary is obviously critical, but after you've got your paycheck a week after week after week, if you get another 5% increase, no matter what level you're at, the impact of that works only for a week or two, and then you're kind of back to the same kind of status and level again. But if you can actually bring some content to your employees to make them feel appreciated, valued, and to enjoy the work just a little bit more, it's going to make a difference. They're going to be your brand ambassador. So when you're out looking for new people, they're going to be saying, hey, you should join this organization because, well, they treat us well. And while their work might not be maybe the most exciting thing in the world, we are appreciated, we are valued, and it's not a bad place to work. And if you can get your employees saying that even not a bad place to work, that's really a positive in today's environment.
How did you find the environment over at Unilever?
Um, that was an interesting one. No, what I found was that as I progressed through my career, I started in Ireland with a kind of a predecessor of Unilever, a small organization, and built that small organization, sales and marketing, into what was genuinely, no BS, the best performing organization in the European scene for the company. Then I moved, a great time. Then I moved over to the UK, and much bigger, and I realized, hey, we're getting a little bit bureaucratic here. Then I come over to the US, and again, more bureaucracy there. But I had a boss who was an Italian American guy who made Robert De Niro sound like a choir boy. I mean, it was F-bombs left, right, and center kind of thing. But we had a great time, though. And he kind of ran his own independent empire. So we weren't kind of beaten down by HQ. But then Unilever took us over, and they're a great organization, very, very successful. But the level of bureaucracy, it happens with every organization. Just as it gets bigger, the bureaucracy increases. So I found it as a kind of a happy-go-lucky, maybe creative, slightly idiosyncratic Irishman. I found it difficult once Unilever took us over. So when I separated from them, I was more than happy to go out and do my own thing. But I do understand that large organizations have got to have procedures and processes. But at the same time, though, you can do things within your own department to make people feel better, happier, and more motivated. And I'm happy to suggest some ideas on that for you as we go forward.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to hear some ideas. I know you have a couple different uh, couple different plans that you use. You have, for example, CHAPS. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, CHAPS is a concept that I really believe, and I know from working with clients that it does work, Dan. And the basic idea here is that um, one of my core programs is titled The Gift of Gab. And Gab is an acronym for Goals, Attitude, and Behavior. Goals, Attitude, and Behavior. And I say to an organization, if you implement this gift of Gab, it will help you to have a better employee atmosphere, better employee engagement, and better employee retention. Within the gift of Gab, the first element is goals. And I talk about goals on a macro level and then on a micro level. And on the macro level, I basically say to people, what do you want to be famous for? And they kind of go, oh, what do you mean? And I say, I don't mean famous like Lady Gaga or like all the famous stars kind of thing. What do you want to be famous for within the organization? What is it you want your boss to say about you when you're not in the room? What is it you want your colleagues to say about you when you're not in the room? And if you know what that is, we work through it a little bit, give them a little bit of time to think of it. And if you know what that is, I'll say, all right, I'm not going to ask you what it is, but hold that in mind. That's the macro goal, what you want to be famous for. I'll now give you, chaps, 5 micro goals that will help you to achieve that macro goal. And I say, I kind of say jokingly, oh, it's not just chaps, there's chapesses in the room as well, okay? So it's ladies and gentlemen, all right? But I want to talk to you about chaps, and I'll use it as a kind of a neutral gender point, because CHAPS is the acronym for the 5 micro goals. And I will go through them briefly here, Dan. I'll ask you a
Okay,
question. Would it be fair to say that when someone compliments you, you feel better?
that's true.
Yeah, okay, all right. So what I'm saying to you now as and to my audience is when you achieve a goal, you feel better. So we'll try and provide you with 5 micro goals that spell the acronym CHAPS that if you achieve will make you feel better and will make others feel better. All right. So we've accepted that when someone compliments you, you feel better. So let's turn that around and put a goal tomorrow that I will compliment one of my colleagues. Now, I've set it as a micro goal. When I compliment one of my colleagues tomorrow, I'll hear myself say, hey, I've achieved a micro goal that I want to compliment a colleague. When I compliment that colleague, because when we achieve a goal, we feel better. The endorphins start running, the dopamine kicks in our brain, etc., neurochemicals. So I've achieved my micro goal. I feel slightly better. But the person that I've complimented, how do you think they're going to feel? They're going to feel positive, upbeat, and happy as well. And one of the simplest ways to encourage people to put in that little bit of extra effort and not just turn up is to be appreciated, to compliment them. And if you can find this way to compliment someone in your team on a regular basis, it can make a real difference. Now, when I'm doing my work, I often say, people sometimes say, well, Conor, it's not that easy to compliment someone. And I make the comment that, well, you can always find some reason to compliment someone. You can say something like, wow, your hair doesn't look as bad today as it did yesterday. I mean, something like that. Or another one, I mentioned that to my niece. I put that note to her a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn. She'd seen some of my material on LinkedIn, and she was just commenting, and I sent her back that one. And she comes back with another one. She said, oh, maybe, yeah, I like compliments like that. And she wrote, you're not as annoying today as you were yesterday. I mean, no, they're goofball, but I use those kind of just to grease the axle, make people appreciate my point better about compliments. But what I do say is that, all right, I understand it's not always that easy to be able to come up with a reason to compliment someone every day. So what I do encourage people in the corporate sphere is that if you have got a daily meeting, and you might have that when you're on the factory floor with your team just before the shift starts, or you might have it in a restaurant, in a huddle, etc., and you're trying, or what am I going to compliment them? The question to ask, Dan, is, what did we do well yesterday? What did we do well yesterday? And someone who's looking after tables 11, 12, and 13 and 14 will say, well, actually, Maria helped me when I was swamped with that large group of people that came in, etc. So now what have we got? We've got the person saying they had a problem, complimenting Maria. But what you can now do is you can say, hey, Maria, that was absolutely brilliant. Fair play to you for doing that. And what's happened is you've asked the question, what do we do well? Someone's going to respond with something. You can then compliment them. And if you do that on a regular basis, people are going to be not slow to raise their hand and say, what we did well yesterday was X, Y, Z. I think that is really important when you're speaking to people on a daily basis, because if you're a manager trying to just give your team a quick run through what's going to happen today, it becomes wallpaper. But if you ask the question, what do we want? What do we do well yesterday? It's good. The other thing is, if you're having weekly sales meetings or marketing meetings or manufacturing, supply chain, it's always problems, problems, problems. That's the fact of life. But if you start off the meeting, I have another way you can maybe start off the meeting as well. But one of the first questions you ask at the meeting is, what did we do well in the last week? And we start with a positive, where they then put the compliments out to people, and then we can start talking about some of the serious issues and challenges. And if people see a balance between compliment and critique or coaching, depending on where you want to look at it, it's going to make it more valued, and it's going to be accepted better when you do have to put some serious points to your employees about their performance or things like that. So C is the first micro goal in the CHAPS compliment one person each day. Second element of the CHAPS concept is H, and H is for hear. What did he say? He said hear. Okay, so hear. And by that I mean, my goal is I'm going to hear the words thank you tomorrow from one of my co-workers or colleagues. And you're kind of saying, but sure, that happens all the time. It might well do, but it goes over our head. It's wallpaper. So if I set myself a goal that I'm going to hear the words thank you from one of my colleagues tomorrow, to do that, I've got to do something for the colleague. Okay? So when I do something for the colleague and hear the words thank you, I realize, hey, I've achieved another micro goal. I feel better about myself. The dopamine is kicking in again. But the colleague you've done something for, because they're actually saying thank you, is appreciating you more. And if you as a leader or a manager can get into the habit of complimenting people, doing something very, very basic to help them in their workplace that generates a thank you, you're well on the way to creating a good work environment. The next element of the CHAPS acronym is A, and A is for address. Now, as I say here, when I'm speaking to audiences, by address here, I do not mean that little pink chiffon dress that I was seen wearing on Facebook over the weekend. That should not have been published. Did we take it down yet? Okay, all right, it's taken down. Okay. I keep talking to an imaginary person here all the time. but actually, it's a serious point. It's a good way just to break up the Zoom calls as well. So, by address here, I mean address people with their name when you're in conversation with them. The fastest way for you to have a visceral connection with someone, I believe, is by using their name. The most powerful word that you can use to me tonight, Dan, is Conor. The most powerful word that I can use to you tonight is Dan. And it's the same in any organization. If you're on a sales call, make sure you use the client's name once or twice. If you're making a pitch to someone, make sure you use the client's name once or twice. If you're involved in negotiations with someone, compliment them, maybe find a reason to hear thank you from them, but address them with their name. It will make a real difference to the conversation. And I do say that this CHAPS acronym, we'll come to the other two letters in a few minutes' time, are really powerful in an interview situation. If you're going for a job and you can't find a reason to compliment the employer or the recruiter, it's going to make an impact because they'll realize, hey, they've done some work, but also the compliment works. You'll probably hear the words thank you. When you're in conversation with a recruiter or an interviewer, address them with their name once or twice in that conversation. And the next element that you can do as part of the CHAPS acronym, whether it's a sales pitch, a presentation at workplace or an interview, is P. And P is for positive. The micro goal here is that I will use a positive word or a positive phrase deliberately in conversation tomorrow with my people. So I'll go into work and I'll use maybe, let's say I've decided to use, maybe I know what the agenda for tomorrow is. I'll have a quick think about it, the agenda, or what can I say positive about this? So let's say excellent performance, okay? Right. So you go into work tomorrow when you're talking with him, you deliberately say, gang, this has been an excellent performance so far this week. All right. What's that going to do for your team? Make them feel good. What's it doing for you? I've achieved my micro goal. I appreciate that. I've feeling slightly better as a result of achieving my micro goal. But my micro goal being achieved makes the other people that I'm working with feel better as well. Okay. So I do believe that using words and positive words like amazing, brilliant, cheerful, delightful, energetic, friendly, Guinness, as I say. Guinness is a positive word to an Irish person, you see, Dan. After a while, if you can get into the habit of using those positive words combined with the other elements of the CHAPS concept, it is quite credible to suggest that after a while, your team are going to say use words about you and the environment that you create, like amazing, brilliant, cheerful, delightful, energetic, friendly. Let's go for a Guinness or whatever your beverage of choice is. Why? Because you're using positive words, making them feel better, and it really does work. Final element of the CHAPS acronym is S, and the micro goal here is to put a smile on someone's face. Because if you put a smile on someone's face, well, you're going to smile back. When you smile, the endorphins kick in. When they smile, the endorphins kick in. Feel good kind of a vibe again. And the way to do that, sometimes I suggest, is that if you see let's say you're doing some kind of a meeting, you've seen a humorous cartoon in the last week or a humorous a picture or something like that, pop that into the presentation. I do suggest, and I've had some clients that take this, and a lot of clients who I know have not implemented it, and I think they're missing a trick. If you have a weekly sales meeting or a weekly manufacturing meeting where the same people are sitting in the same chairs for the last X number of weeks or months, kind of thing, or years, um, it's the same thing over and over again. One of the ways to get energy into that meeting is to start the meeting. First thing on the agenda is a joke. Okay? And the idea is that you're delegated next week, Dan, to come up with a silly joke. It can be anything that you just search on the interweb and in internet. That's not offensive, obviously, but that'll get a smile. And what I suggest is the worst jokes, the best jokes are the worst jokes, i.e. the ones that kind of give a terrible groan or something like that. I can't believe that. But what it does is it just changes the vibe for the start of the meeting. Then if we can go with questions like, what did we do well in the last week? You're starting off with real positivity in the meeting, and now we can get into uh, the challenges and the issues, which we know might be contentious. And when we're having those challenges and issues, if you as a leader can remember the CHAPS concept and compliment someone and address them with their name and use positive words from time to time, you can have a better meeting.
Connor, uh, these are pretty simple things. Like, why do you think people have a difficult time using them to begin with?
Well, I think what happens is that we just concentrate on what's in front of us. We don't, you see, in a sense, these are what might be called soft skills. But soft skills are really hard to implement. But soft skills, though, if they're implemented well, can have a dramatic impact on the environment. So for this to happen, I do think, Dan, and this is why I like the CHAPS acronym. When I'm doing concepts, I like to try and provide an acronym to help people to remember it. And I know from a number of different clients that talk to me months later about the CHAPS acronym, etc. But what you've got to do is you've got to be intentional and say, all right, my job is that I want to be able to motivate my team. I want to be able to retain my team and not have to worry about employee engagement. As a leader, I cannot substantially improve your net worth. But as a leader, I can improve your self-worth. And if I do that on a consistent basis, I'm going to have a better team. I'm going to have a better productivity. I'm going to have better employee retention. I can't improve their net worth significantly. I can improve their self-worth significantly.
And the great thing about CHAPS is that it's applicable to everyday life as well. Anytime you go out in public, take the time to compliment someone. If you go to a store and there's an employee waiting on you, use their name. It's it,
Absolutely. I mean, I always do it at a restaurant. I'll always ask for the wait staff name. Sometimes they'll volunteer, but I'll always ask for that. When I'm at any event at all where someone's got a badge on, I'll address them with their name. They kind of initially kind of go, "Oh, how does he know my name?" But they forget they've got the badge on, kind of thing. It's simple little things. And the other thing I suggest sometimes when I'm talking to association groups where there's a good mix of men and women at them. And I say, gang, sometimes I'm even a marriage counsellor. And the marriage counselling I'm going to give you is chaps. When was the last time you complimented your spouse? When was the last time you said something positive to them deliberately or put a smile in their face? You go home this evening, use the chaps concept, you will have a better relationship with your spouse. Hopefully it's good already, but this simple little thing can make a real difference.
absolutely. And I think another thing that some people might struggle with is that they become sort of uh, robotic and get stuck in a routine. Like, for example, have you ever gone to a store or a restaurant and the person that's waiting on you, they're like, "Hi, how are you doing?" But like, not once do they like make eye contact with you. They don't smile. They're just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember in the food service, when I worked in the food service area, someone once said that the most important thing for a wait staff is to be uh, have be there when you're there, kind of thing. And as like you said, not go through the motions. And the person who is there and pays attention to the person that they're speaking to, negotiating with, uh, debating with, or serving, um, when you're paying attention to what they're really looking for, you have a much better chance of getting what you want from that conversation or from that transaction.
It kind of is for chaps. Is there any one particular letter where you find that people struggle with the most?
I think the compliment one frightens people, Dan, and we're not good at doing it. And that's why I really do believe the question, what do we do well in the last week, on the last day, if it's a daily meeting, really does allow you to naturally and genuinely doing it. Sometimes people say to me, well, I find it difficult to compliment my team, or if I compliment them, will it be genuine? Um, I think that if you can't say to your team once a day kind of thing, hey, well done, or appreciate the effort that you're putting in. I know things didn't go right in the last transaction, but fair play to you. Just words like that. If you can't do that with your team, it's not the team that's the fault, I think. And I just leave it hanging when I say that comment. Yeah. But it's not, we're not good at complimenting. So the question, what did we do well, I think allows you to be able to say then naturally.
Connor, can you talk a little bit about attitude and where that fits into the equation? Like, how important is a person's attitude?
Right. When I'm doing the goals, attitude and behavior, GAB, I talk about the importance of having the right attitude when you have to have the right attitude. And it is critical. So, and it's also very hard to always have the right attitude. But people can smell a sour attitude straight away. When you walk into, when I talk about as a leader, when you walk into a room, you're setting the tone in that room immediately just by the way you're walking in. When you're involved in a conversation with someone where there might be a kind of an imbalance in power, etc., if you come across as being aggressive and kind of confrontational, the other person is going to be aggressive and confrontational as well. And what I do say, Dan, is that human beings, the way I do it is that human beings mirror human beings' reaction. Right. So if I come into a meeting with all guns blazing, the other group are going to kind of have all guns blazing as well. If I come into a meeting looking for a solution and genuinely seeking it, I'm going to get more of a response from people. And I do believe that we can choose our attitude. I've got a number of videos on my YouTube channel about how we can choose our attitude. But the basic question I suggest to people is that when something goes wrong, ask yourself the question after you've exploded, which I understand that will happen. But once you've kind of got that kind of initial fury or expression out of the way, ask yourself the question, what do I want my attitude to be? What do I want my attitude to be? Because if I say, when I ask that question, what do I want my attitude to be? I'm not going to answer, I want to be angry. I want to be frustrated. I want to be annoyed. I'm probably going to answer, when I ask the question, what do I want my attitude to be? Oh, I'm kind of frustrated now, but I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be annoyed, and I don't want to be upset. And you will make some effort not to be angry and not to be upset when you ask the question and answer it the way I expect you will answer when you ask the question, what do I want my attitude to be? So you can choose your attitude. I'm not saying it's always easy, but especially in areas where emotion isn't at its highest, where you can be a little bit objective, you can choose your attitude. And what I do say to a lot of HR and uh, manufacturing or service industry leaders who have got challenging times from time to time, all right, you've got a difficult meeting coming up in the next couple of days. All right, there's two things you can do here about this. One is you can ask yourself, all right, what do I want my attitude to be going into this meeting? And I'll say, all right, I want to get something out of this meeting. If I go in with all guns blazing, it ain't going to happen. So I want to have a positive attitude going in. Be well prepared, professional, positive attitude. And if I go into that meeting then with a positive attitude and then start using the CHAPS concept, where I compliment the people I might be negotiating with, who might be difficult, but I can find some ways to compliment them some way or other. If I hear the words thank you from them, may or may not in this situation, but if you compliment them, you might get a thank you back, or at least a murmur. Address them with their name consistently. Try and use some positive words or phrases or examples of where we work together and we can do it again. Whether you can put a smile on their face or not in a contentious meeting, maybe, maybe not. But taking some elements of the CHAPS concept together with what do I want my attitude to be before you go into the meeting is going to make it a meeting that is much better chance of having a positive outcome than going with all guns blazing and going, "Arr!" Right? Because what happens? Human beings mirror human beings' reaction.
Connor, you were at Unilever. What was your goal?
When I was at Unilever, my goal, I think it was probably, I wanted to be a good leader. I actually did try and spend some time on trying to understand that and be intentional on it. But my main goal, I suppose, at the end of each year was to make sure that we achieved our sales figures and our marketing numbers, kind of thing. This would have been 20 years ago now, so I'm kind of working from a hazy memory at this stage. I would like to think that if we went back today, I would be a better manager and a better leader because I understand people better. I understand the frustrations of people. I do a lot of work with people who are on job search, Dan. And that happened because I separated from Unilever myself. And I know the pain and the frustration that people who are in job search go through. But I also do know that I've got work and ideas and concepts that help them. I don't charge for the work I do with people in job search. It's just a real passion of mine. But what I do say to them is that if you can have a clear idea, talk about goals, attitudes, behavior, the important thing when you go into an interview is know what you want the recruiter to say about you after you have left the interview. And not enough people pay attention to that when they're going into the interview. They kind of just going to say, well, I'm going to go in and I'm sure I can do X, Y, Z. The recruiter believes everyone who's he or she is recruiting can do the job based on their resume. So that's kind of a given. It's the intangibles, the soft skills really that are very, very important. What is the recruiter going to say about you when he's selling you onto the client? And if you know what that is, then you can go into the interview and you can use the CHAPS acronym to help you to connect better with the interviewer and get your message across as well. So it's but going back to your original question, and what I was answering, I do think if I was back in corporate world now, I'd probably go crazy with the bureaucracy because I like my boss now. I see him in the mirror every morning. But what I do think is I would be I think I was seen as being a pretty good leader, but I think I would be much better now, more empathetic and understand that while I can't improve most of my employees' net worth, I sure as heck can improve their self-worth.
Now, did you develop CHAPS while you were still at Unilever, or did that come later on?
Or it came later on, to be honest with you. Now, based on what people say to me, and I mean, I still got good reaction and relations with people that I worked with years ago, I think I probably um, exuded some of those naturally. But I think I would have been much better if I had displayed them intentionally. And that's what I'm saying to leaders. Um, be intentional about trying to make your employees feel valued. Be intentional about growing their self-worth. And when you can grow their self-worth, you're going to grow productivity. Ultimately, hopefully, it'll grow the net worth of everyone.
Is there any issue that stands out to you as being like the biggest issue that businesses face with their employees?
Well, I mean, if employee retention and engagement just kind of is a universal one. Um, I think uh, I remember reading an excellent book by um, Shea, the guy who grew his apples into Tony Shea. He wrote a book called uh, Delivering Happiness. Okay. And what his view was that if you could make your employees feel good, you're going to get better results. And God love him. I mean, he died. I'm not sure whether it was suicide or it was just a bad accident. But I mean, he was desperately unhappy in his later years. The irony was that his mantra was he wanted his employees to be really successful and happy. And I think one of the simple messages he put in there was that have your employees believe or make them see that they are actually making progress. And an example he kind of quoted was that initially when he was in Zappos, the people mightn't get promoted for 18 months and they were getting frustrated. So what they did was they kind of built a few little sub layers in. So you got promoted after 6 months, you got promoted after 12 months, you got promoted after 18 months kind of thing. And after 18 months, you're only the same level as you would have been originally when we only had that 18-month level in. But it was a level of progression and going forward. And I think people need to believe that they are making progress in their life and in their um, uh, job. Because if you just feel as if you're stuck there forever and ever and not being appreciated, you're just kind of going to atrophy for a while. And then the famous numbers about 70% of people not being engaged at work, which I think is a bit of a Gallup poll marketing tool rather than anything else, comes into focus, that kind of thing.
Oh, you have all these great ideas, Connor. Have you ever thought about starting your own business?
Well, I mean, I've got my own business, which is Irishman Speak. So what I do is I work with clients to improve their people performance and productivity with a smile. I've been doing it for the last 20 plus years. A lot of good years and a few bad years. Boy, I mean, COVID wiped out most of my engagements. 2009, 2010. Um, Challenging, but overall, for me, um, the bank account is important and vital, but I tell you what, the emotional uh, satisfaction I get from the work that I do is absolutely the thing that keeps me going. And going back to the comments I made about job seekers there a few minutes ago, Dan, the biggest kick I get from anything that I do is when someone I've been coaching with or working with a little bit or in job search, doing a pro bono, as I said, if after 4 or 5 months when they've been going through hell, because that's what job seekers go through a lot of the time, they tell me they've landed. That just makes me feel so much better. And I go to bed with a smile on my face. I don't know what happens to us after this when we leave this world, but if there's a God up there, hopefully he'll remember some of the positives that the Irish guy brought to people.
Connor, tell us a little bit more about irishmanspeaks.com. What can people find there?
Right, irishmanspeaks.com is basically my website for my programs and material on improving people, performance, and productivity with a smile, Dan. I speak to associations, corporations, and healthcare to do this kind of thing. One of the areas I speak a lot to is healthcare and oncology. I've had two bouts of cancer over the years myself, and I just really appreciate the great work that healthcare professionals do. And my favorite audience is oncology nurses because they go through hell. They see so many people going through hell, see a lot of people pass away. It's a high stress job. I love going into them doing a program around the gift of gab, but it's got a lot of humor in it, but with messages about how they can create a better patient experience and better work environment as well. And I just love to hear them laugh. Um, I most of the time now, because I've got my content pretty well done, I know when they're going to laugh, and if it really goes well, like the laughter can go for 15, 20 seconds, and that's one of the secrets. I think once you understand humor, leave your audience laugh. Now you've got to have a good message. I'm not a comedian. I'm a business speaker that uses humor a lot of the time to reinforce my message. And what I've discovered is that if you let them laugh once, they'll laugh again the next time. And sometimes at some of the audiences that I've done, I've just kind of come off stage and I could be smoking something, man. I'm just feeling so good about the whole thing.
Would you say that humor has come naturally for you, or is this something you've had to practice a lot?
It's something I work a lot on. I mean, I've got another concept around humor. We're using the word laugh, Laugh, which helps people to add humor to their presentations. It probably does come somewhat naturally to me. It's not probably, it does. But I work on it though. And I do pay attention to every single piece of humor that I see or hear during the day. And what I say to people, Dan, is that if you want to add humor to your presentation, you don't have to be funny to be funny. What did he say? I said, you don't have to be funny to be funny. Sorry about that, okay? And by that I mean, if you just pay attention to something, to the things that you said or did in the last week that put a smile on people's face, and you probably say, I don't recall that. Of course you don't, because you haven't paid attention to it. All right? But from now on, if you start recording and listening to what you said that put a smile on someone's face, if you record and listen to what someone else said to put a smile on your face, if you see a humorous quote in a book, pay attention to it. If you see an anecdote that makes you smile, pay attention to it. Sometime, somewhere, you'll be able to take that element and just drop it into your sales pitch, into your presentation, into your keynote, whatever it is, to reinforce your message. You're not putting it in to for the sole purpose of to get a laugh. You're putting it in to reinforce your message, and in doing that, you do get a laugh, which helps to connect you better with your audience.
Absolutely. Connor, what kind of things do you enjoy? Like, what kind of hobbies do you have?
What kind of hobbies do I have? I used to motorcycle riding until last year, but my motorcycle crapped out on me, unfortunately. And I'd been riding for 20 years and never dropped the bike. And I kind of said, maybe this is a kind of a message, Conor, just leave it. So I no longer do motorcycle riding. So I took up hitting a little white ball a lot in a green field. They call it golf, some people do. I call it pulling a golf cart around a field, but I enjoy doing that. I love spending time with my family. I've got two darling granddaughters, red-headed Irish kids that are only just living half an hour away from me, so that's a blessing. Someone once said to me that being a grandparent, I know you're a long way away from it, but being a grandparent is God's reward for not killing your kids. And that's just so invigorating and life affirming. And I just enjoy reading a lot as well and developing new content. I mean, people say, Conor, when will you retire? And I say, I'll be doing my final speech from my coffin probably, because it's just a joy. The work I'm doing just is so fulfilling. I'm dead lucky, Dan. I really do believe I'm one of the luckiest guys around, because I love what I'm doing, and loving what I'm doing, I know I can also help people. So that's the Irishman speaks.
That's very awesome. Connor, you've shared some valuable insight and tips that people can practice at work or in their everyday life. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to mention?
No, I think we've covered most so far we were hoping to cover. Dan, you ask good questions. You allowed me to ramble on. I hope I didn't go on too long. I do think that I try to use this word a few times in my presentations. Being intentional is important. You, as a leader or a co-worker, you need to be intentional about trying to make it a better workplace, because it ain't going to happen just because you want it to happen. You've got to work on it. And what happens, I think, in a lot of organizations is they train the employees and the managers at certain technical skills and being good at auditing or accounting or lathing or cutting, whatever it is, but they don't pay attention to the interaction and the interplay they have with their colleagues. And if you haven't got a good interaction with your team, you're not going to have a good team. So I encourage people to be intentional, to use the CHAPS acronym. They can be intentional and contact the Irishman Speaks as well if they want to.
All right. Conor Canine, the website irishmanspeaks.com. And do you have any social media links where you like to interact with people on?
I do. I'm as I'm not telling people I want to be all over the web like a rash, Dan. So I've got I've got Instagram is Irishman Speaks, TikTok is Irishman Speaks. I'm really getting nice response on TikTok, I got to say. YouTube is Irishman Speaks, LinkedIn Irishman Speaks, Facebook Irishman Speaks. So the branding is pretty consistent. All one
Oh.
word, Irishman Speaks. Conor, by the way, is spelled with only one N. My parents couldn't afford two N's back in Ireland, apparently. So that confuses people sometimes, but it's Conor Canine, Irishman Speaks. But it's been a great chat, man. I really enjoyed it.
All right, Conor, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Take care. Stay well. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about my podcast, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram to search for a Happy Moment Podcast. And I will see all of you next time. Take care, everybody.